It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. There is an update to Cocaine Gate, as we've been talking about this morning. So now there is a third location. You know, first it was, if I remember right, it was in the library. Then it was at some other place in the West Wing. Well, now there is a clarification as to where this cocaine was found. And now the Secret Service, they're saying that it was found in a more secure location near the Situation Room in an area used by staff and officials and visitors and VIPs. And so my immediate question is that if you can't even get the location right, then it is abundantly clear that they're not going to be able to figure out whose cocaine that is. The Daily Mail puts it, this Fox News puts it this way. The West Executive entrance sits on West Executive Drive, the driveway between the West Wing of the White House and the Eisenhower Executive Office building. That drive is where Vice President Kamala Harris's motorcade parks and where senior staff have parking spaces as well. They say that senior staff and the vice president go to work in the West Wing through that particular door. And so there's a lot of questions now as to where this cocaine was found, why the location keeps changing. This is NBC News.
However, it is a high-traffic area, and by that I mean you do have people who work here in all kinds of jobs, not just political jobs, the military facilities, people who work for the operations of the White House, and they do have the tours that go through there if they are among the private tours with staffers as sort of a sponsored member. So very high traffic.
You know, it's funny because they talk about, and I get it, you know, they talk about how it's a high-trafficked area, but this is the West Wing of the White House. So this is literally one of the most, supposed to be, one of the most secure locations in America, perhaps even the world. And yet nobody knew that there was a white substance there until, you know, they eventually saw it and had to evacuate. Then they figure out that it is cocaine. And so the Secret Service leading the probe, including, they say, looking at security cameras and visitor logs. They also say they are carrying out fingerprint and DNA analysis of the bag. And I guess, again, I don't understand why now there is a third location. And they're saying that this is a completely different floor of the West Wing than previously reported.
We had earlier been told that it was one level above and also a lobby area in the West Wing closer to where the Oval Office is. This is down below. The other important news is we had been told the investigation could take a couple of weeks. They're now revising that timeline and saying by Monday, perhaps even earlier, they anticipate having reviewed all the important material they need to review. DNA and fingerprinting testing has been going on. I'm told additional testing is happening today.
Does anybody else think that looks a little sus? A little suspicious? Where it's like, oh, it's going to take weeks. Now it's going to take hours. Really? Why is that? Because number one, you don't know whose cocaine that is, or maybe you do know whose cocaine that is, but you want to telegraph that you don't. Now, part of the reporting this morning is that initially they said it would take a few weeks, but now they're saying not only will it take just a couple of days, however, they say that we also may not even be able to find the cocaine culprit. They say that they are DNA testing the bag. They're also checking the cameras. Now, the problem with the cameras, and this is, again, one of those parts of the story that I don't understand, but the cameras are more wide angle and not fixed on one particular area. Now, again, a lot of this stuff looks really suspicious to me because we have technology like Google Earth and satellites in space where we can pinpoint terrorists in a cave in the mountains or in the desert. But we don't have the technology to figure out where this came from? Again, I don't understand it. Now, to me, it looks like if they wanted to find out, if they wanted to figure out whose cocaine it is, that they could figure it out. Again, this is the White House. Kayleigh McEnany had a great point. She has some intel on this. As you know, she spent years in the White House, and she talked about this particular entrance and how it was really close to the entrance where Joe Biden himself will come in and out of the Oval Office.
The President of the United States walks through this entrance. If the motorcade is on West Exec, which it often is, I've seen President Trump walk through there, and the thought that President Biden could have been within feet of a powdery substance that was unknown, it's incomprehensible and it is inexcusable.
So, I mean, she brings up a great point. Now, what we don't know is how long the cocaine was there. I mean, do you think that it was there for, I don't know, a couple of hours? A couple of days? We don't know. Now, my feeling is that people in the White House, I've been saying this all week, I bet that people in the White House know exactly whose cocaine that is. But everybody just wants this to very quietly go away. That's what they want. They want it to go away. And I think that's why they've moved up the announcement to, well, we'll probably have something in a day or two, and we're probably not going to have much to report. They want this to go away. And so if it was to continue on for weeks on end, it would take over the news cycle. And then the constant drone, the constant conversation of, was it Hunter Biden's cocaine? Why isn't he getting drug tested? You know, all of those things. You know, yesterday I was joking that I kept getting this videos from folks. And the video was of Hunter Biden out on the balcony with Joe Biden and Jill Biden and I think Hunter's kids or one of Hunter's kids. And people kept saying, look at this, look at this, look at this. He's taking a bump, which is what they call a little thing of cocaine. He's taking a bump. It's off of his hand, the back of his hand. And the video shows Hunter putting his hand up to his hair and then up to his nose. And then he does that whole thing of, it's sort of like as cocaine people do, they sort of pinch their nose a little bit, that kind of a thing, as he walks away. Now, I don't believe for a second that Hunter actually, although it probably would help him get through some time with his old man, but I don't think that he actually did take cocaine on the presidential balcony in front of or in the company of Joe or Jill. I don't think that he did. I actually asked some people who know about these things, you know, taking cocaine and stuff, and they said no, he did not take a bump off the back of his hand. But I'll tell you what the White House tried to do. The White House actually tried to invoke the Hatch Act as a reason not to answer the question about whether or not this cocaine was actually Joe Biden's or Hunter Biden's. I want you to listen to this because one of the incredible things is that this guy, Andrew Bates, who they say is a mid-level White House employee, he was asked the question about the cocaine and basically said, can you confirm or deny that this cocaine belongs to Hunter or Joe Biden?
Former President Trump has made some pretty wild posts recently on social media. One of them was that the cocaine found in the White House had belonged to either the president or his son. Are you willing to say that that's not the case, that they don't belong to them?
I don't have a response to that because we have to be careful about the Hatch Act.
Are you kidding me? Now, first of all, the Hatch Act is about using, state resources in the mode of a campaign. So if you're up on, for example, the podium, there in the White House press briefing room, you're not allowed to campaign for the president when you're up at the podium. because you're not supposed to use state resources or, taxpayer dollars to do that. But you can certainly, that's what the Hatch Act is all about. You can certainly say, no, that was not the president's cocaine. I mean, it's like amateur hour. And this guy, Andrew Bates, legals, experts in the Hatch Act, they are dumbfounded by the fact that he refused to say that it's not Joe or Hunter's cocaine. I mean, it's astonishing.
It had belonged to either the president or his son. Are you willing to say that that's not the case, that they don't belong to them?
I don't have a response to that because we have to be careful about the Hatch Act. What I will say is that I have noticed there does seem to be some increasing frustration coming from that corner in general. And I think it is probably rooted in the contrast between their substantive policy records.
Wow. I think either Andrew Bates is on cocaine or he needs some, if that's his answer. Because for him to say, well, former President Donald Trump, he's frustrated because, I'm paraphrasing now, because he sees Joe Biden's policies working and his policies clearly didn't. Well, this guy, he's already told in one, how long, about 15, 17-second soundbite? This guy tells a number of different lies. Number one, he talks about how he can't comment or deny that the cocaine was, Hunter or Joe's, because that would be a violation of the Hatch Act, which clearly is not the case. Because the president and those around him, they can certainly deny that the president has committed a crime without violating the Hatch Act. That's number one. So that is lie number one. Number two is this thought that somehow Joe Biden's policies are better than Donald Trump's. What a joke. I mean, do we need to talk about Bidenomics? Do we need to talk about, Biden's border? We've been talking this morning about the State Department and their report regarding the botched pullout of Afghanistan. I mean, we could talk about all of this. Let a spy balloon fly all the way across the country, but you shot down a weather balloon. Well done, Joe. So the more that the Biden administration has to deal with this, the worse it gets for the Biden administration. When they can't deny it, do you find this funny? See, I'm kind of laughing. I don't have any outrage. I find it hysterical that they don't even have the intellectual fortitude to be able to deny that it is Joe or Hunter's cocaine. Speaking of which, Kamala Harris is back in the news. Wait till you hear her latest word salad. It's coming up next on Red Eye Radio.
Back on May 30th, the U.S. Drought Monitor reached a 3-year low for total drought coverage. Yet, as USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey points out, several changes over the past 5 weeks resulted in a net change of
an 8 percentage point increase in drought coverage across the contiguous United States during the month of June. So as we come right up to the 4th of July, that's the date on the latest U.S. Drought Monitor map, just under 27% of the country in drought.
Improvements in much of the Great Plains, Rockies, and Intermountain West were more than offset by worsening conditions in the Midwest, Western Gulf Coast region, and Pacific Northwest. Yet in the case of the Midwest,
they have received some much-needed rain in recent days, just starting to be reflected on the latest Drought Monitor map.
Not enough, though, to counter what is a 65% drought coverage percentage for the Midwest on May 30th. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report is made possible by Cenex Roadmaster XL Premium Diesel and Citgo Lubricants.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio. The phone number is 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. Kamala Harris was asked yesterday, Thursday, to define culture. This is how that went.
Well, I think culture is a reflection of our moment and our time, right? Uh-huh. And present culture is the way we express how we're feeling about the moment.
Confused?
And we should always find times to express how we feel about the moment that is a reflection of joy, because it comes in the morning. We have to find ways to also express the way we feel about the moment in terms of just having language and a connection to how people are experiencing life. And I think about it in that way, too.
So, is there anybody that understood what the hell she just said? She was talking about, how people feel like in the moment or something like that. And I've just felt confused. And the more that she spoke, the more confused I got. Now, I'm sitting here because I try to be fair. And if somebody said to me, hey, Mandis, define culture, I would say, define culture. Well, culture is, you have a society. It's a way of life. It is various views and actions and customs within a particular society. I mean, what was that, like 8 seconds? I mean, she went on talking in circles for 25 seconds. So as you can imagine, Twitter went nuts. By the way, I did tweet this out. And I think I said something like, you can follow me on @DanMandisShow. And I think I said something like, Kamala needs her cocaine back. I did put LOL in there just, in case anybody was triggered. But Twitter did go nuts. Artificial intelligence czar explains culture. Actor James Woods. OMG, what is wrong with this babbling brook of a woman? Says Fox News contributor Liz Peek. Here's another one, and Twitchy's Doug Powers. Can somebody tell Kamala she shouldn't be eating every gummy in the package all at once? See, I think that this is part of the reason why she is at 27.4% as far as an approval rating. 53% have an unfavorable opinion, a net rating of -12. Now, I listen to that soundbite because I don't like to go off and just criticize. I want to understand. I listened to that thing like 5 times. And I don't know what she's talking about. And I don't know if anybody else does either when she, when she starts going on about,
It comes in the morning.
Well, I don't know what that meant. What? Joy? Happiness? Culture? Nobody seems to know.
We have to find ways to also express the way we feel about the moment in terms of just having language and a connection to how people are experiencing life. And I think about it in that way, too.
Do you think that when she starts talking, Kamala Harris, because, let's face it, word salad, Kamala Harris is like, she is the server-upper of word salad. And she has been doing this really, since she became vice president. And so one of the questions I would actually ask is, do you know when you're doing this? I'm just curious. Or is she able to, at the very least, is she able to track what it is that she's saying? I don't know.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. 1 866-907-3339. 866-90-RED-EYE. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
You know, when you work in radio, you get all kinds of, free stuff sometimes. And so for whatever random reason yesterday, the radio station that I work at here in Nashville, we got free Bluebell ice cream. And I couldn't really figure out why they were here at the station giving us all free ice cream. And then I think I realized what it was. Bluebell was trying to capitalize on the stupidity of Ben & Jerry's. Now, I think it was Wednesday morning when I was filling for Dan Mandis here, filling in for Gary and Eric. They return on Sunday night, Monday morning. And I was talking about the 4th of July tweet from Ben & Jerry's. If you missed it, here's what it said. This 4th of July, it is high time we recognize that the U.S. exists on stolen indigenous land and commit to returning it, they say. Let's learn more, take action now, and they give, a website and so forth. So bottom line is they decided on the 4th of July to call out America and stating that we exist on stolen indigenous lands, like we stole it from the Indians. And as I said at the time, stuff happens. And you look at any modern society that is, winning, for example, or existing. Well, there was another society. There was another culture there before ours. But unfortunately, through time, stuff happens. And people migrate. And land is taken over by, one society over another. I mean, that's part of history. And so I just, for Ben & Jerry's, I didn't really understand, okay, so what do you want to do? Now, they were very specific in their website and so forth, and they said that South Dakota and Mount Rushmore has to go back to the Indians. And so this on the heels of Ben & Jerry's, this on the heels of Bud Light and what they did and how they suffered a massive stock fall. Well, now apparently Ben & Jerry's is suffering the same fate. Unilever, the parent company of Ben & Jerry's, because remember, Ben & Jerry's, they've been controversial for years. They've been leftist for years. I mean, they point out Ben & Jerry's left-wing activism has made headlines before, especially when the brand announced in July 2021, that it would stop selling ice cream in certain parts of Israel. In April of 2021, they advocated for defunding the police. That was, of course, at the height of the Black Lives Matter riots. They partnered with NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick in 2020 to support his social justice activism. I call it BS. But it goes on, and I believe you get my point. So I do wonder if Americans have finally had it with this kind of crap. Because I'm old enough to remember when companies actually cared about all their customers and not just the ones that they agreed with. Well, now, apparently, Unilever, who owns Ben & Jerry's, Unilever's share price went from $52.32 per share to $51.37 per share. They say erasing an estimated $2.5 billion in market cap as social media users called for a boycott. According to Google Finance data, the packaged goods conglomerate saw its market cap drop from roughly $133 billion to $131 billion because its share price decreased. Now, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you, this is from the Daily Caller, and I don't really know if that's a steep decline or not. I mean, see, to me, it doesn't sound like it is a couple of $1 million. I mean, these companies, they have wide swings in stock prices and so forth. But I do wonder, though, if the American people are just tired of this stuff. But then if you love Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which I don't, I've never cared for it. But if you love Ben & Jerry's ice cream, then you see them saying this stuff. And if you are a highly political person and they decide in their infinite wisdom to tweet out on the 4th of July that the U.S. exists on stolen indigenous lands, it's almost like they want you to not purchase their product. Now, I know that some people will say, well, you know, you got your Starbucks, or some people claim Starbucks is, woke. Of course, there's the big controversy regarding Disney right there. And I'm noticing, one of the things that I'm noticing is that conservatives and Republicans, they're finally understanding how to boycott. Now, my Nashville audience knows, because I host a morning show in Nashville on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, and I've always said, I mean, for years and years and years, I don't do boycotts. I don't call for boycotts. And the reason why I don't call for boycotts is because I think people can use their own brain and decide whether or not they want to take a stand against Ben & Jerry's. You don't need a talk show host to tell you how you feel. You don't want to buy Ben & Jerry's? Don't buy Ben & Jerry's. Now, if there is a brand that I use and I'm passionate about, and then they do something dumb, well, then I myself will stop buying that item. You know, there was a time when I was so angry with the NFL that I swore I would never watch another NFL game. And then slowly but surely I did gravitate back. And it is interesting, by the way, because I've noticed that some of the activism from the NFL has actually started to fade. I think companies are beginning to, don't get me wrong, they're still woke. But I do believe that some companies, after, Ben & Jerry's, depending on what ultimately happens to them, you had your Target with that controversy. And, of course, we all know what happened with Bud Light. I do wonder if there is a jump the shark moment with these companies where it's like, all right, you can only push conservatives so far. It's typically the left, as we all know. It's usually the left who is really good at their boycotts, really good at cancel culture. Well, now it's our turn. Now it's conservatives' turn. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Because, and again, I myself don't call for boycotts. But I do not think it's a bad thing when you have people who are conservative and deciding, you know what, that's just a company that I don't agree with. And so I'm not going to go to Disneyland. I'm not going to go to Target. I'm not going to go to Ben & Jerry's. Here's the problem. The problem is that when you do that, when you start wanting to take a stand, and you're not going to go to Ben & Jerry's, you're not going to go to Target. Well, now, if you're going to be consistent, then people can say, okay, well, if you're not going to Target, do you go to, I don't know, you name the store. Because I can almost guarantee you that every single store that you go to has either donated to a politician or done something that would offend someone's political proclivities. And so how much actual research do you want to do into the companies that you go to and that you partake? Now, some people say that Starbucks is woke. I don't. I know that they had some baristas that, wanted to talk about Black Lives Matter, whatever it is. But you know what? When I walk into Starbucks, I'm not hit with any of that. And if they want to put rainbows all around the store, well, then they could put rainbows all over the store. See, a business can do whatever it is that they want to do. Ben & Jerry's, obviously, they don't care about conservatives. But I'm a big, and if you're a fan of the free market, if you're all about free market, and if you're conservative, you should be all about the free market. These companies are making a free market. What's the best way to put this? They're making a free market decision to go ahead and take political stands on some of America's most divisive issues. And if they do that, well, then it's at the peril of not only their company, but also the stockholders as well. And then it becomes a problem for the stockholders. So I'll be watching Ben & Jerry's. I think it's going to be interesting to see how much Ben & Jerry's does see a decline, because they have been I think they're probably one of the most liberal companies out there. So I'm going to be very interested in what happens with Ben & Jerry's to see if they are Bud Lighted, which is what a lot of people are calling for. 866-90 Red Eye. Dan Mandis here, in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
Listen.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. I always find it interesting what we can argue about. So I don't know even when it was. Was it the last segment, maybe the segment before? But I was joking about the bump that Hunter Biden may or may not have done on the balcony of that White House. Now, maybe you remember last night we talked about this. I think that I tweeted out the video at Dan Mandis Show. And it shows Hunter putting his hand, the back of his hand, up to his nose, and then doing that whole thing where he sort of pinches his nose a little bit as he discreetly walks away. And everybody is saying that Hunter Biden clearly did a bump. He had a little bump on the back of his hand, and he snorted it real quick. Now, I have slowed that video down. I have looked at that video at least 10 times. I've spoken to people that used to take cocaine, and they say no, that's not how you do a bump off the back of your hand. But I said it earlier in this hour. And I've got no less than 20 messages between Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, all three at Dan Mandis Show, by the way. And everybody's telling me he was clearly taking a bump. I don't know. I mean, would he really do that in front of his mom, his stepmom, his children, and all the cameras that were around? I mean, I know this is a guy that likes to be videoed and photographed. But I came to the conclusion because I don't see how he would have actually put the cocaine on the back of his hand. But as I've been saying for days now, there's one way that Hunter Biden can put all of this to rest, and that is by taking a drug test. I don't think that he will, because I don't know if he's clean. I doubt that he is. Because, I think that I want you to think about this. If Hunter Biden was clean, and this all goes back to the cocaine in the White House and so forth. If Hunter Biden was clean, then wouldn't he raise his hand and say, all right, all you accusing conservatives? All right, Donald Trump, I'll take a drug test. Where's the cup? I mean, but he hasn't done that. And I do understand that we're all, innocent until proven guilty. But, I mean, if it were me, I would want some vindication. I would find a cup. I would go ahead and do whatever I needed to do to clear my name. And not only to clear my name, but to stick a middle finger to the people who are saying that I'm on cocaine. And that I took a bump on the balcony at the White House. I don't know. I don't know if he did or not. You know what? You people tell me. You look at the video of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Jill Biden and one of the Biden kids, and they're on the balcony. and Hunter looks like he may have taken a quote-unquote bump, you tell me if that's what he was doing or not. I don't think that he was, but I myself, I've never taken a bump. So I don't know. I've never even seen or held cocaine in person. And you can send me a message on Twitter, on Facebook, or Instagram as well, all three at Dan Mandis Show. The good news is Gary and Eric, they return Sunday night, Monday morning, and so that is exciting for everyone, trust me. And I will look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks for listening to Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.